Well, welcome to the Dream Labs with Dr. Contrast here. To those of you on board here, Bets and Ibrat, Chip, and everybody, boy, it's good to have you on board here. Let me just back up for a moment here and explain the difficulty we had yesterday. I was all set to go live, for example, yesterday at 4 o'clock, and all of a sudden found out there was no internet connection, and the sound had gone sour on us. It was just absolutely just a real disaster. So we played dumb here for about maybe 20 to 30 minutes to try to get it activated, and then nothing would come about. So I got back in the office this morning and began to look at the system again, and I found out it was a camera that was not coordinating with the sound system. So we had to go back in and change some of the settings, but we're ready to go. And I hope you can hear me okay, and really looking forward to this setup here. As I said, let's go back to last Thursday. I started a whole program or setup on doing some XK120, a 1954 Roadster, and from that began to generate some, what would happen, for example, in 2024 with some very advanced vehicle studies. Oh, thanks, Chip. It's good to know we're okay here, sound-wise. And so we went back in and looked at this thing from a point of view of what if we took that 54 process, that really beautiful Roadster, and then brought it into the 2024 series with an IMSA or GT machine that might look picking up some of the same romance that the actual vehicle had back in the 50s. So we played up an awful lot on this whole sway line coming off the quarter panel into the rear quarter, and looking at just a simple elevation. And I came back in from the elevation into a little three-quarter rear, just getting a little more romantic, very food-looking, almost nostalgic 2024 a la Jaguar Rolls-Royce process with this whole process of getting this whole form together, but adding a lot of the canards that are very much in vogue with, and downforce systems that are in vogue now with the IMSA series or the Rolex series. So from that, I just went to those two. And then what I thought about was, we've got that all set, but what happens if, for example, when we go to what does it look like in the overview, and looking at maybe a very dramatic three-quarter front. So I went back and put together a little thumbnail sketch based on this. Hey, hi, Justin, how are you? Good to have you on board, Justin. How are things in Germany? So nice to have you on board here. So just started a stream here today with getting into this retro. Hopefully we can wrap up this process today with a couple of real roughs and some marker pencil and some pastel work. And I'm going to go to tone paper in a few minutes here. That I've got something already preset. But I went back, and after looking at this guy in the pure elevation, just keeping a nice simple process here with that guy, what would it look like if we went to an overhead three-quarter? What kind of surfaces are we looking at behind the fenders and so forth, and then the overall form itself? So I went back in and did a little overhead three-quarter, just a bit of a study sketch first, just to kind of lay down some surface work, getting some section work in the red pen, kind of describing some section and making some modifications to the shape itself. So once we had that all put together, I said, yeah, that's kind of a neat little process. So from that sketch, I went back and refined it and moved into this. Did a little bit of preset homework in terms of getting things put together, and just a very dramatic overview, overhead three-quarter front. So I'm going to take a minute here and go back in and do a little marker pastel work on this guy to kind of give it some life. Then we'll switch gears into getting some more some interesting, very moody looking tone work. So I'm going to come back in there very quickly here with just some very interesting, let's kind of give this thing some designation here, come back in and just pick up some color. This is what happens here. We're going to come back in a little bit of that racing green process here. Pardon me as I just kind of ink this in, and we'll go back and refine it as we go here. A little bit of process work, just getting a little bit of some graphics in here. Let's see, we just did this. Just getting this process down. I'm doing this very contemporary. What if we brought the XK120 Jaguar into a modern genre of racing material in the 2024 Rolex series or IMSA series? Just start to put some real interesting stuff together here. Let's come back in and get this all put together. A little bit of color. As I rotate the pad here just a bit. And to all of you, thank you so much for your patience with me yesterday. I've just had a whale of a time trying to get the sound process all set. Find out it was a camera process, so we've got that all up and running, and I hope the sound is okay. So Chip says it's good, we're good. So there we are. Let me rotate this again here. Get a little color in place. Yeah, just a really very dramatic overview of what this form is going to look like, and begin to really put this in. We'll just say that designers are well paid. Dramatic perspective. Yeah, Bets, it is. It's just a good way to look at the overall view of what the vehicle is doing from the elevation into this overhead perspective. And to answer your question, Justin, yeah, I think designers are pretty well compensated. I mean, it takes a lot of time to build your credibility. When I started, it was a very fair wage, and I worked my way through the system. It was very, very promising. Probably better off today, but I think it'll take some time to get some credibility up there. But yes, I think it's overall it's a good field to be in to kind of generate and work with. So, pardon me as I go ahead here. Let's stay in some of the things we know we're going to knock out and come back in and just rework on some very interesting things here. Let's go back and get the sponson out of the way. I'm just going to ink this in. Just a little bit of flair to this guy before we move into something more dramatic. Some tone paper work here, which is a great process to work with. Tone paper is absolutely dramatic. So it'll give you a little bit more of a feedback process on what this guy is doing here. So I'm going to bring this over. Pardon me, I'll just be very methodical to get this out of the way and bring this very strong front downforce canard into play here. And put a little bit of some finishing touches on the actual surface work with some pastel and a little bit of marker to work with here. So let's just kind of restain this guy. Get one more pass in there, a little more drama. Got much more animated with some of the stroke patterns. Kind of give ourselves a little more offset here. And since this canard is in the light source, I'm going to change the tone of that in a moment. We'll just catch a little bit of that fender coming off of that guy. Drop that into place. A little more drama in this side of it. A little more to work with here. Now let's just take this guy and bring it back into play and get this back in the light source on this side. So let's give it a little bit more, less of a tone change. So a little bit, there we are, right there. Now we've got that. Let's go back into some of the body surfaces here and begin to work out some of the things we're dealing with here as far as surface goes in the body. So let's go back in here. Working very quickly, very fluidly, just to put some really emphasis on some of the body shapes itself. And back in a little bit of stem on the way on the shadow side of this negative or this just chamfered piece into play. A little more pass down below where that's going to go. And a little bit more on the back side of this cockpit area too. So it's just enough to kind of give ourselves a little bit of fill. So there we are here. Let's kind of go back in and just a little bit of graphic change here. Depending between sunny afternoons. Hey, Ballistic, how are you? Then the contract flows in. Yeah, you got that's right. That's exactly right, Chip. You know, you build, you get your reputation up, then all of a sudden things begin to move in, and that's your marketing device to get that all squared away here. So. Justin, I'm pending between studying industry or just car design. Any tips for a clear decision? I think, well, I think probably the best thing to do there, Justin, to answer your question there, is to really take a look at, sit down and ask yourself, what do I really love to do? Where's my passion? I mean, what really, for lack of a better term, excites me about what I want to do with my skill set? Sounds to me like you've got a lot of great experience thus far in some of the transportation design systems. I would strongly encourage you to look at that, number one, as a real point of reference to really work with, and don't give up on that dream yet. I think there's a lot there, and I think you'd be remiss all of a sudden if in time you gave that up. And I can understand what your thinking is, but I also believe too there's a lot of depth there in terms of what you're after with regard to really putting some interesting things together for your career. So. My strongest advice would be, and I work with a lot of kids and advising them in certain things such as this area you're dealing with, is to really sit back and analyze, what do you love to do? What's your passion? I'll give you an example from mine a bit. I've been in this business now for, God knows, almost 50 years. And I can tell you, Justin, I've never had a day where I've not been excited about the design business. I've been very fortunate to build an audience. I've been very fortunate to do some neat things with my career. And I think you'll have the same opportunity afforded to you as well. So I would strongly recommend that you go back in and really weigh the passion and say, you know, well, this is what I want to do with the rest of my days. And I don't want to wake up someday 20 years from now saying, geez, I wish I could have. That's really a tragedy. So I wish you all the very best in making that decision. If I can help you from time to time, feel free to ask, and I'll be more than happy to pass on a little bit of wisdom that I have here in terms of putting that together. So let's move along here. A little overhead study. And yeah, Bet's a pretty dramatic perspective, but I think a lot of fun to work with because it gives you a lot of options to deal with. Let's put a little bit of this in place, get a little bit of color in here, a bit of a warning lamp or a signal device of some sort. Put that in place. Let's get that guy in line. Let's come back to a little more graphics in the rear quarter of this guy. Let's pick up some of this stuff. Some of the graphics back here. Some little tail canard graphics. British Racing Green. And you come back in again. Just get enough of this to kind of just give it a little bit more substance. There we are. There and there. Let's go back in with one more pass, a little bit of marker to get this guy to really kind of, let's get this shadow down here. Just enough to kind of bite this thing off, get this surface to roll just a bit. Pretty dramatic, but nonetheless worthwhile. A lot more animation. Doesn't hurt one bit. Get those shadows to roll off of here. Shadow to drop in through there. In here, and again, one more pass in this area, just to get a little more believability in this guy. And again, the background's interesting because that's an old meadite. That's just nothing but a pastel wash. I'll show you that in just a moment, how that operates. But all this thing's starting to come to life, hopefully, for us here. And I want to take a second and do the following. Let's put a little bit of graphics in this guy. Let's come back in. Pardon me. Do a little bit of drawing. Probably going to turn this thing upside down. A little spooky with the lamping graphics here. And just for fun, bit of a buried halogen of some sort, a conventional lamping system of some sort to give a little more drama in here. There it is, kind of a little spooky here, almost like cat's eyes. Playing up this Jaguar 124, or 120 rather, EMSA machine for the year 2024. Let me pass this up a little bit here. Bring this up just a bit more, pardon me. So there's the foundation being laid right there. We just have enough surface work in to get this thing running here. So let's just try to do this. Let's come back in and say, what I want to do a little bit more graphics in this guy. Let's pick up some of that same with pencil now. Let's pick up, so it's a little bit more definite. A little bit of a fender flare, some graphics over the top of this quarter. Give this thing more of a face. And as again, I'll turn this thing around. So there we are there. This just kind of gives it a bit of a stance. We're starting to put this piece together here. Honestly, you're a wise man. Well, Justin, I wouldn't say I'm a wise man, but I'm an honest man. I just want to let you know that I think your talents definitely will merit staying very much informed with the fact that you've got a skill set that you want to develop. And I'd hate to see you give that up. So let's do this, gang. Now the fun part. I'm going to show you a little bit of it. Here's my palette here. This is what I refer to as a pastel wash system. The good old-fashioned wheel roll pad, the good old-fashioned alpha color pastels. Why alpha color? Because they're soft. They're softer. They're not. They're cold pressed, so to speak. And when they're cold pressed, it leaves a fiber in it that is easy to work with. Hot press, you get this coating on it, and it's very hard shell. But the soft cell does really neat. A lot of British green in there. Yeah, let's hope that's good. Think that makes sense, Chip? You like that? So here we go. Let's kind of put a little bit of wash together in this thing. Now I'm going to use this Weebro pad as a sketch rendering tool. Again, a little more tone in this thing, just to kind of give it a little more character. And walk through it. Put a tint back in through here, and even coming back in some cases, a little bit more of the solid, just using the old hand system to kind of separate what some of the shapes are. Look what begins to happen here. Let's kind of get this into place. A little more reflection coming off of that rear quarter area. A little bit of tone back into this. You're going to key it all together. And again, back in through here, just enough to kind of take this wheel envelope, bring that into play a little bit more. All of a sudden, look at how that begins to all begin to form that shape together. And it takes an awful lot of just picking out where you want to go with this thing, and then not to kill it too much, but just to give it enough impact and surface to make it work for us here. A little bit over the top of this guy to give a bit more tone to it. Notice I'm using one of the greatest design tools in the world, my hands. I'm not a big believer in getting into a lot of mechanical stuff. I just don't have time for ellipse guides and circles and templates and all that stuff. I just really like to really get it back in and do some neat stuff with just handcrafted material here. Let's have a little fun with this thing. Let's say we put a little bit of this, a little bit of accent piece on the inside of this doorway here. Let's get a little more drama. Let's do this. A little bit of red. A little bit of badging on this thing. A little bit of nomenclature on the side of the vehicle. That kind of just little things like this now to add some spice to it here. Let's go a little deeper with this along this highlight line here. Let's bring this into play. Let's get that highlight to really work. And separate some of these shapes and just bring it right into the form. Again, handcrafted. Just bring in that whole shape and let's run it right through that highlight, right through here, right through that whole hip into this area. And since there's a little bit of a break here, notice that break, we're going to break it right there and do the same thing. And let the viewer see there's a little bit of a transition change in that whole process. But there's nothing more magical, I don't think, than working with this stuff. It's pastel. It's a great medium because you can make mistakes and it still will save you, for example. Look how soft that begins to look, but yet it gets the job done, hopefully. I've got a couple of questions here. Yes, we were dealing with a Jaguar here. Any more British and it would be a top hat. I think I could put that in the actual insignia. That'd be kind of neat there, Chip. Justin, are you still in business or is it just your hobby? I think designing is with you. You can do, yeah. I'm still active, Justin. This is my business. I do a lot of work, for example, do a lot of consulting work with a lot of a different variety of firms, like architectural firms, product design firms, transportation firms, on Twitch TV. Do a lot of landscape architecture. I mean, there's a whole variety of things that I'm involved in and still active. An educator, hopefully, in some cases. And really had a lot of time, a lot of fun with just putting together the career. In a real good sense of being diverse, a lot of variety. And I think that's why you should be very careful about what decision you want to make here, because I think it's going to be one of those systems where you work with Justin, it's going to be powerful because there's so much to be dealt with. And if your skill set is great, terrific. One thing I would suggest too, be very careful about really focusing in on transportation design. Yeah, that should be your passion. But be flexible enough to really work in certain areas where, for example, I came through a school at CCS in Detroit, went on the GM design staff, concentrated on transportation design, but I had great tutorship going through school where the people I worked with did a tremendous job of teaching me architecture, product, so I diversified. And that's been, over the years, I've never been slow. I've always been very busy and extremely grateful for that too. Believe me, very grateful. So it's been really neat to see how that happens. So let me just do this, get back to this guy for a second. Let's put a little bit of tone down through here, kind of bring that highlight through. See, I'm using my hands again to develop a lot more shape. Just going to get more of this into play. Let's go back and get some of that green and do a little bit more tone over this guy. And there it is. Now, the nice thing is too, one of the great design tools is this. It comes in an eraser. Let's get back to highlight. It comes right back to some really neat stuff. What you want to do is go back in and just take that up, take that highlight through, run over the top of that edge and bring it right into play. Boy, I mean, that's just really fun stuff. Let me get this guy for just a second. We'll pull this away. Get that all set up. I mean, there it is. I mean, all of a sudden, very simple. Let me come back in here just for a moment and do the same thing over here. Let's get a little bit of this highlight to kind of scream through for us. This little separation here to come through and scream for us. Bring this crossover. And get a nice big hot spot right in there. And take it right through the lamp. And there you are. Gonna clean it up a little bit more, pardon me. And once you lose it, for example, you can come back in and do some neat stuff with the fact that you now come back in and say, well, I've just a little more tone in through here. There, I can cover that up and get the job done. Put that in place, and then put that in place, a little bit more play there, a little more of this, scruff that through. And then before you know it, there it is, gang. That's a quick little study. Let me clean this up a little bit. One of the things about pastel, it does get a little bit on the messy side, but that's okay. You can erase it and maintain it. Let me just get the brush back out here. A couple of more detail areas to work with here. We'll get her done. A little bit of shadow off of this thing. Drawing back in. Been a huge proponent of that. Begins with drawing, and it ends with drawing. You can't avoid it. A little bit of shadow. A little shadow in this drop here. And again, even through here. Undercut. Undercut. Again, back into this line. And get this into shadow. Just a little bit more tone. Into highlight. Back out of it again. Now there's a pretty good little setup here as far as a perspective sketch goes. So let's do this. Let me clean things up here just for a bit here. Some more detail back in that lens. Some more graphics back in through here. Add a little bit of detail in through here. Where those brake exhausts are. There it is, gang. That's a real quick little dirty study here of putting together the process of getting marker pastel and again, just basic drawing skills back into the process itself. This is another the reason I put this together was a variation on theme to understand what this form is looking like when you move into, for example, when you come from this view, which is kind of telltale in a way. There it is. There it is in elevation. And then look what begins to happen moving into perspective. Let me move this up a little bit here so we can get this guy to read. There we go. Just a bit more. Is that going to be okay? Right there. There it is. So there you are. So that's what this thing begins to look like in the other view. I'm not really convinced that that's quite yet the elevation we're after. But I think it has a lot of merit in terms of you just don't know what the surfaces are doing until you move into a 3/4 overhead front. And we have some other studies here I'll show you in a moment. But I think this is the fun part about the whole process. The surprise is, what does it look like in elevation? Very simplified and refined. But look what happens when you go into a perspective study. Look at the overview. It changes the entire character. So, yeah, thanks very much. Chip, you think it's cool? If you think it's cool, I think it's cool. So we're in. Let me just do this, gang, and we'll move on here. Not to bore you to death. A little bit of, make sure there she is. There's phase one. Now the fun part begins. Let's get this guy aside. In addition to that, I thought this is kind of one of those spooky forms where all of a sudden you get into some things that might look like this. This is where it gets to be fun. Let me get this out of the way here for a second. Pardon me as I move some things around here in the studio. This is what is known as tone paper. And all of a sudden, it's just a really unique, I think, different kind of approach to problem solving. I've already laid in some graphics, for example, to put together the pieces. Getting a little bit more front 3/4 piece here, a little bit of a rear 3/4 piece, just to kind of look what the stance is on this thing. So once we go into this now, I want to show you how very effective this pastel wash material is. For example, I just want to spend some time. Let's do this first. Let's get a little bit of line work in place here, and we'll go from there. A little bit of the venue here, get some line wake up. A bit of a different nose cap on this guy. Some little breathing ducts on the far side and a highlight. Get that all set up. Go back in there and pick up a little more of this dark green here. On second thought, let's get a bit of this cockpit. Let's get that lined up. Got a little bit more of this highlight in here. Going to lay in a little bit of a scrub side here. Now the neat thing about this is you can come back in and pick up the same process again. A bit of highlight back in here. Look at me. We're going to get right back and deliver some hot spot in here. Get right back to paper. This is beautiful. This is the magic of this paper. Like all of a sudden you can get right back to highlight on this thing. Do you commission? Not demanding one, just curious. Yes, I do commission work. Yes, I do. If you know if anybody wants any work done, for example, on certain projects, we're more than happy to do that. I love that part of this business. Let's get this over the top. A little bit of highlight on top of this thing. A bit of highlight back in through here. Let's get this nose cap back in place. Notice how I'm taking that surface and beginning to use the eraser to get back to a really interesting set of forms and keeping it very ethereal and very ghostly-like. And I think that's the neat part about this whole process. All right, means I move this around just a little bit. It's back to highlight. I mean, look at the drama you're getting into that for. Just a nice, simple surface, a soft surfaces to work with here. Let's do this. Get a little more hot spot up on top of this cap. Let's get this out of the way here just for a moment. There we go, gang. Just going to put a little bit of graphics together here. Doc, you mentioned, okay, you got that all set there. There's a little bit of a little tiny kind of a front 3/4 study here. Let's kind of get this into place here, just in a more shadow back in that intake. Again, look at how really simple that is, but yet at the same time, it begins to really kind of help and sing for us here in terms of being very simple, very ethereal. More graphics in these wheels here. And let's get this guy to kind of knock itself out. Just a little bit more shadow in there. There you go. That kind of gives it more of a guttier look. So there's a first pass at this thing. Just looking at maybe the little front 3/4 as opposed to where we were in the other view there. There's one approach to it. Let's take the other thing, the really ethereal process here. Let's kind of change this up just a bit and we'll go back into, oops, let me turn that around here. Hope this is making sense for you, gang. Making sense at all? Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to come back in here just for a little bit. Tells where that sponson is. And there we are. There it is. There's that first little sketch there. Front three-quarter study on what this guy might look like. Now, this is kind of moving along here, and we'll get some other things taken care of here in this rear three-quarter. So let's kind of go. There's the front piece, overall front three-quarter, but it might be a little bit of character of the machine itself. Now let's come back and let's get refold this thing here. We get a little bit of a clean surface to work with here. Let's come back in. Very direct. Nice little pastel wash. Just zoom that right through. A little more highlight in this thing. Just kind of dust through it here. Let's kind of come back and get this eraser to work for us here. And there's another little study here, a little front, a little earthy quarter of this guy. And just walking around the shape to see what might be potentially a good plus or minus to work with here. Let me find my eraser here, where I put it. Oh, there it is. So, so far so good, gang. What do you think? Just making sense here? I'm trying to get a little more drama or a bit more emotion into what this form is actually doing here. Let me get this all lined up in the camera. There we are. So those are two pretty good studies here in terms of what this guy is going to look like here. Front three-quarter, rear three-quarter, a little bit more romance, a little guttier. I'll stop here for a moment and just kind of take some questions. Looking pretty square over the world here. It's a very different, elegant, kind of a long form. Trying to, again, the whole theme here is to kind of bring this thing back into what this whole process of the 1954 XK120 Roadster was a very unique machine. And we're trying to bring this back into play here today with this contemporary GT car. One thing missing, pardon me, let's put a little bit of intake in here. And there it is, a little deeper. There we are. It gives us a little bit more character to work with here. There it is. The top one has lost its wing. Not really, it's just kind of flying in there. It's right off the center of the machine there. Let's see, looks lovely. Chip 7, yeah, it's pretty good. Chip 7, the top one has lost its wing. A little more impact on it, you think? How's that, Chip? It's going to get more stance. It's going to come back and put a little bit of cleanup on this guy. How's that? Any better? That makes sense? There we go. How's that? Do you take criticism well, Doc? Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem at all. What's the conversation here, Brad? Fire away. Let's see. I thought it was cockpit window. Oh, you know, it looks all good. Let's see. Chip 7. Let's see. I feel like the front wheel is kind of off, walking away. It's glued to the car body. Which one? This one here? Top or bottom? You mean, are you referring to this one right here, Brad? Is that the one you're after? Oh, the one on top, yeah. Well, no, that's absolutely correct perspective, because if you lay this out, for example, if I come back down through here and begin to open this thing up, that drive line and that drive line are going to set that circle up, and it's really close to the fender well itself, so it is in correct perspective. So I hope that didn't distort things here for you, but that's where we are. She's in pretty good shape as far as everything else is concerned. So yeah, it appears that way because the rim surface, I'm trying to get a little more drama back into the rim surface itself. I just put more, and let's put a little more impact in this guy, kind of knocking some of that out. More of a race car machine, so not a lot of highlight in there, so it kind of gives the appearance of being really tucked in there. So there's sketch number one. Let me just do this and we'll kind of move on here. So there's the first pass at it, and let's kind of go back into this one. I just kind of prepared this real quickly here for this guy. Just a little bit more dramatic in terms of front three-quarter again, and again into a real nice front end graphic here. But what this thing might begin to look like here. So let's kind of clean this up a bit here. Let's attack this thing just like we did the one before. Let's kind of lay this in. A bit of tone in this thing. Great thing about this process is it really kind of takes a minute to just knock in shape. And there it is. That surface is done. Same thing with this on the far side. Over the top again, and just blend it in, and you're there. I mean, look how quick that came together. So slick. Then let's put a bit of tone back in through here, and get that to blend in. And just like that, we have this surface already rendered. I mean, look how simple that was. Very emotional, extremely quick, but at the same time, extremely forgiving in terms of working with it. Just going to get this little poochy nose working here. Just got to put some concept together here. A little bit of highlight over the top of the fender. I'm going to draw back in now and just pick up some of the graphics. A little bit of shadowing through here. That's where that recess is. And it gives us a little bit more character there. Same thing over the top here. Just going to get that design line in place. That guy, I'm going to sharpen this up just a bit more. I'm going to direct a white nose cap on this guy. Just got to clean this up a little bit. And kind of erase it back in. We can use the eraser to kind of bring it back together here for us. Now I put a bit of highlight in this thing. A little bit of pencil work. That little spoiler back in there. A little bit of hot spot along this edge. Very ethereal. That's what we're after, just a real moody sketch here in terms of putting together some really interesting dusted forms here. Just got to get this cleaned up just a bit. And get some of the excess. A little bit of highlight back in this guy. And we'll just keep moving along here. Hope this is making sense, gang. Pretty quiet out there. Is it helping at all? Fit it up just a little bit here. What do you think, gang? Oops, let me get this out of the way here, just a bit more materials out of the way. So we're trying to build this form up a little bit more. As we come back in through here, I need to get this guy a little more stabilized here. Pardon me as I just kind of mix in some more tone. There it is. Should be a little bit better. Let's kind of bleed that in just a bit more and come back in and put a little more eraser on this guy. Let's see if we can get this guy to read a little bit stronger. Erase some of this out. Erase some of that and get that highlight to come right up along that bone line here. And let's kind of grind it in. So there's a nice little nose cap on this guy. Leading edge to work a little bit. And, pardon me, there's a little phase number 2. What do you think there, gang? Let me get this stuff out of the way so we can kind of see what we're after. There we are. What do you think? There's number 2. Yeah, that's it's a lot of fun. Just hope to put it all together. Just keeping it nice and ethereal, nice and loose. Nothing really dramatic here in terms of trying to really, very subtle, yeah, it's a pastel and pencil on tone paper is extremely fluid process, guys. It's fun to work with. Hey, Brad, are you still there? Hope I didn't lose you here because of that comment made on the wheel system and so forth, but let's hope you're still hanging in there. Now, this is the one that's going to be fun. The last one's this really evil-looking front-end shot here. We've got to wrap it up with this guy. Let me move that up into place here. Any questions so far about what we're working with here? One little change of pace here. Let me do this. Keep looking at all the materials I'm working with here. Somewhere along in here is oh, there it is. A little more drama back in this little intake area here. Should we get it? There, a little more drop. There it is. That's a little bit of an intake piece. Kind of separates it just a touch here. So last but not least, just kind of really walk this thing nice and simply through the final process. Let's kind of just keep it nice and easy. Again, with this pastel wash process, a little bit of pastel. Let's go ahead and pick in, for example, just let's do this. Just kind of walk in with some real interesting dusted material here, keeping it really fluid. And then where it needs to be, a little bit of color added. Keep it real spooky. It's a really good solid front, pure front elevation, looking right at it. With an eraser working here. Look how the eraser, let me stop there for a moment. Look how the eraser is doing the work for me, just kind of really spelling out what these shapes are doing here. So far so good. Let's get a little more color in this guy. Where we need it, right back in through here. We're going to erase out a little bit. A little more tone back in through here. A body graphic on it. A bit in the upper. And again, just down through just below these little spots, and let's get those guys in place here. I do a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And let's just kind of bring this up to speed now. And there it is. Well, a front 3/4, what this guy looks like, and all of a sudden, you know, we're just kind of really looking at this thing from the point of view of just keeping it really very ethereal, extremely fluid, and this guy is pulled back on this guy. Let's get a little more texture back in through here. There it is. That's a little stronger. There it is, gang. I mean, I just went through a whole litany here of process work, and I hope this has not been boring for you here, but I just want to really change pace and go from one element to another. Let's get myself lined up on camera here. There we are. So move over just a touch more. There we go. How's that? Pretty interesting process here in terms of going from, let's go back and review where we are here. We started with this little elevation study here, and that's where we were. That's where we started with, and then went from that. What does it look like in a in an overhead 3/4 study? There's a nice little marker study with some pencil work and so forth on top of all that. And all the way down the line here, going right on through here, and switching gears and going to like a front and rear 3/4 study on Canson or on the tone paper to get this thing to work a little bit. And getting that little cockpit up front here, and then the canard off the backside. Same thing with this guy here, rear 3/4 study. Just real nice, loose little sketches here to kind of bring it all together. And last but not least, an overhead, just a nice, again, front 3/4 study, just getting some very simple forms put in place here, keeping them very ethereal. Sorry, I'm not getting all of that on the screen there. There we are. Keeping it very ethereal, but at the same time, some really interesting looking, evil looking forms in terms of conventional lamping and so forth, like the XK 120 had back in the 50s, and trying to really mimic what this guy was doing here, for example, in the overhead 3/4 view. There's a lot of similarities here with the wheel plants and so forth, lighting systems, and floating cockpit, so to speak, in the center of this guy. So I really appreciate your time here, folks. This has been helpful to you. Sorry for the long delay here in getting things together, but let's just do this and we'll kind of get it all organized. There she is right there. So we're all set to fly right there. That does it for today, and I hope it has been helpful here. I just want to wrap up that series on that study we did last week of the XK 120, the actual roadster, the illustration piece that we started with, the 1954 series. I'll buy two. Very interesting series here. Going through a different set of processes into ballpoint pen, then into marker pastel, then into Canson paper or tone paper, and getting a little ethereal look at this thing. So it really begins to take on a personality of its own. So I hope that's been some help to you. One thing I did notice it, let me just kind of bring this back into play, a little bit of recessing through here to get that offset. There it is. That helps. The little fender flare kind of forms and drapes over the top of the body side bonnet. So looking good here, gang. And again, I just want to make a couple of announcements here. We've really been delayed on getting the drawing book together. I don't know what the problem is. We're trying to get up on the website, and please stay tuned. We will be looking at that shortly to get that up on board, and we'll have that for sale, so in PDF format. So thanks for your patience regarding that. And then again, any questions, you have any concerns, please feel free to contact me at my website email address at jim@drcontrast.com. I'm more than welcome to really address any questions you might have. And if, Justin, you're still there, I hope all is well with you. And a little bit of advice here from me has kind of been helpful. I'm certainly not going to try and steer your decisions, but I think with your talent skill, just find out what your passion, what's your real passion. And Brad, thanks very much for your question. Hope that wheel system answered the question for you. And Chip, thanks so much for being on board here today. Ballistic, good to have you on board as well. And Bet's, always great to hear from you. And I hope all's well with you on the Chicagoland there. So let's kind of put this piece together here. And If I've said something right today, please tell me. If I've said something wrong, notify me, and I'll make some adjustments and changes or clarify things for you. So please, really appreciate your taking the time to be with me today. And above all else, really thank you so much for the time. I might be going maybe one more day next Tuesday during the Christmas holidays. I'll just see how the schedule goes. I'll keep you posted by my Discord, and hopefully we'll get at least one session in before the holiday starts. But if we don't get a chance to do that, I just wish to each one of you a very, very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy, prosperous New Year. And I can't thank you enough for being very faithful and tuning into my program here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. It means a lot to me. You mean a lot to me, so thank you so much for doing so. Have a great holiday, and again, any questions, feel free to visit my website at drcontrast.com for some drawing information. My YouTube stuff is up there, Instagram and the Twitch programs are there. Also, the bookstore or the store is there, so feel free to take a look and drop me a note and see what you think. And last but not least, I always sign off with this because I think it's extremely critical and very, very important. Always never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks so much for the time, gang. Have a great day, and we'll hopefully see you next Tuesday. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.